I'm here with Phil in Singapore. Welcome to Singapore.
Thank you very much.
Phil's a Tesla owner and investor. We've just met less than an hour ago.
Yep.
We reached out to each other through LinkedIn.
Yep.
And today we want to talk about Phil's journey with Tesla, his experience both as an owner's investor in this roller coaster ride we've been in the past few years, and what he's excited about. Click subscribe to stay updated to more videos on Tesla. Welcome to Singapore, Phil.
Thank you. That's
What
great.
brings you here this time?
I've been coming to Singapore since the spring of 2001 to train architects and the architectural industry to use a software that was in this. It was a technology startup 20 years ago. So since that time, I've worked with many architects on many of the projects in your beautiful country. And I'm back to have some customer briefings for a week and then go back to North Carolina.
That's quite a journey halfway across the world.
Yeah, 17 hours on one flight, but it's always worth it to come to Singapore. It's great.
We're very happy to have you here. And talking about journeys, how did your journey with Tesla begin?
So I think it was at Autodesk University, which is a technology conference for architects. Probably, it must have been 2007, 2008. Elon Musk was the keynote speaker, and they had one of his early Model S sedans. I wasn't so much fascinated by an electric car, to be honest. I was fascinated by the idea of not having to drive.
Right.
So I think this is actually an interesting investment discussion for later. But and then it was probably 10 years or so later when I actually rode in a Tesla for the first time and experienced the self-driving. And I tell you, this is so seductive and calming. I was very anxious at first, but quickly realized the self-driving, even at that time, it must have been 2015, maybe 2016, it was driving on narrow roads more confidently than a teenager. And I thought, I've ridden with teenagers and I can handle that. The Tesla was better, and it was informing you of what it was doing. It wasn't, at that time, I don't think it recognized stop signs.
Yeah.
But I was fascinated by the idea of having an experience in a vehicle where we've always had self-driving cars, they're just called taxis. But now you have a self-driving car yourself as an individual. And I think this is an interesting transition in what's happening in transportation now. Yeah.
What does that mean to you? Because that's an interesting perspective that the self-driving cars was what hooked you in Tesla in the first place.
Yeah, I think so. Well, today is the 40th anniversary of the Macintosh, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we talked about that a bit. I think whenever there's a technology inflection, it occurs when the technology is removing the need to do something. Okay, so you have an iPhone. Do you use it for phone calls?
All the time.
So I think the interesting thing with the iPhone is that a lot of people buy them, at least for my kids. They don't use it to make phone calls.
Interesting.
So you're buying a phone not to make phone calls. Let me think of another technology. So imagine buying a phone not to make phone calls, or I have AirPods that I wear not to hear things because I just want it to be quiet. The idea of buying a car not to drive.
That's interesting.
Okay, so what I think will happen in that sense is if you have a car that you don't have to drive, although you can, I enjoy driving, but having a car that you don't have to drive, for example, in America, many couples would have two cars, so you can be independent with your transportation. You go to this job, you go to this job, right? I can see very quickly where a family might only have one car. And even if the car is taking someone to work, the car will turn on and drive back and then take the kids to school. And then it'll turn around and come back and take the mother to an appointment, that sort of thing. So, in fact, it will reduce the need to have so many vehicles because the vehicle is able to consider for itself. So when I just got my Tesla in December of last year.
Congrats.
Yeah. After many years.
High performance.
Yeah. Just because of the red calipers, that was the main thing. And my first experience of self-driving, I tell you, it was so satisfying. If I could sleep, I think I would sleep. So the idea of needing to get somewhere, what you experience now with a car, I think is, well, previously with a car, it was really a horseless carriage in the sense that if you're riding a horse, you have to pay attention, you have to see where it's going, you don't want to fall asleep. The first cars were not automobiles. They were truly horseless carriages. I think now what we're seeing is actually the car is becoming an automobile in the sense that it is an automatic way of doing things. But from that standpoint, it's not really a car. I think more of the first experience driving a Tesla is a little bit stressful because of all the things that you have to do differently or that you don't have to do that you're used to doing. So the idea of having to brake is reduced because you reduce the amount of acceleration and it starts to brake. Just to go to a car wash is different because you have to put the car into car wash mode.
That's right.
There's all of these little things that you have to reconsider, even though it's the shape of a car and it has a steering wheel and it has pedals. When I was teaching my wife to drive, I said, "This is not a car; it's an iPad with wheels. How do you drive an iPad?" And she said, "I have no idea. You don't drive an iPad." I said, "Exactly. You have to not think of this as a car. Try to think of it again as your first driving." And even then, she was having difficulty stopping because she would stop too soon, or she was pushing to change lanes. She would push it down and it wouldn't stay down and then pop back up. To put it into park, she was trying to shift up and there's a button there, and she kept moving here to shift. So there's all of these things that you have to unthink. And so that's why I think it is truly an automobile in the sense that it's automating something, but it's not a car. It's like an iPad with wheels. Yeah, that's the idea.
And that's a great analogy as we think also about Tesla as a company. Tesla just released their Q4 earnings, and Pierre Farragut, one of the analysts that covers Tesla, was talking about how you shouldn't see Tesla as just a car company. It's almost like an advanced electronics manufacturing company that happens to build cars right now, which is currently 80% of its business and not forever. Elon Musk has announced that they will be manufacturing Tesla bot in some form and scale by next year, 2025. They're hiring and building a production line. Being a Tesla owner and Tesla investor has been a roller coaster experience. For owners, literally a roller coaster experience. For investors, it's in the heart. You feel the ups and downs. How has your personal experience been for both?
Yeah, so I think if you're going to invest, you have to think of it in terms of you have to look at it a long way. And my experience in investing has always been around companies that allow you to create other things. So I tend not to invest in companies that are for consuming, but more into companies that allow you to create. I think successful companies create ecosystems and they create tools rather than toys. So companies that create successful ecosystems would be Apple, Google, Microsoft, Adobe, Autodesk, and Tesla. I don't think, and we were just talking about this before, if you read Walter Isaacson's biography, I think there's a common thread to what Elon Musk has been doing, whether he's understood it or not, deliberately, in that he is focused on creating tools that allow for the movement of things. So tools that allow for the movement of ideas, for the movement of people. I wouldn't consider them transportation. He talks about money in terms of money is the movement of ideas. It's an encapsulation of an idea. So he's making tools that allow people to move their ideas in themselves, whether it's Twitter, which allows for the movement of ideas, or cars, which allow for the movement of people, or rockets that allow for the movement of commercial travel. It's always about movement and about ideas being able to interact so that the good ideas can come out of it. And I don't think it's so much about his idea being the best idea, but it's usually he has good ideas and someone else will have good ideas. But if two people have a good idea and they talk, usually a third idea comes, and the third idea was unanticipated and very, very powerful. So in the Isaacson biography, he talks about he can be a very hard owner. He can be a very hard person to work with, but yet the CEO of SpaceX has just celebrated, I think, 22 years working. So I think there are ways to work with him that are successful if you understand how to communicate in the style that he understands. And he's not making cars or robots or social media platforms. He's making an environment that allows for the elegant movement of ideas and people. And if you don't have movement of ideas and people, a culture stagnates. So I think whether it was deliberate or not, that seems to be something that's underlying it.
That's a beautiful way of seeing it, that the team behind Elon Musk companies is movement. Yeah. Boring companies, moving people on the ground. Neuralink.
Elegant movement. Elegant movement of thought, of idea.
Yes.
Yep, there's an immediacy to it. And so I think the cars, from an investment standpoint, the cars are just part of it. It's really an ecosystem of collecting human thought and movement. So how do people like to move? If they drive, he's capturing this. What is the zeitgeist of current conversation? Twitter is capturing this. How do people fold laundry? Robots are capturing this. It's always about capturing movement.
Yes.
And that ecosystem, I think he has a multi-decade head start. So Apple, which I don't want to disparage Apple. They're going to make electric cars. I don't think the electric car is that's not the benefit. It's the ecosystem of how people behave and move.
Agree.
And Elon Musk has more than a decade head start. So we'll see how well Apple does.
Agree.
Yeah.
And now, in the past month, with Cybertrucks rolling on the streets in the US.
Yeah, I see it. Have you seen it? Did they have it in Singapore yet?
Not yet. It's in China now. They're doing a roadshow in China now.
I can't believe they didn't do it in Singapore yet.
We're very small. One day, Elon Musk brings Cybertruck to
Charlotte
Singapore.
has North Carolina, has Cybertruck.
So
I
that's-
can't believe there's not a Cybertruck in
It's
Singapore.
crazy.
Yeah.
That's seeing the future. As Elon Musk say, we want a future that looks like the future. It's capturing our imaginations. So how do you see, how attractive is Cybertruck to you as a driver and a Tesla investor?
Everyone, so there seems to be a transition where I've talked to people and they go, I don't like it, it's ugly.
Yeah.
And then I take them to the showroom in Charlotte and they go, oh, that looks amazing. And the next thing is like, I wonder how much it would cost if I want to buy it.
Wow.
So they go from this transition of, I don't like it, because they've only seen a picture, that's not in stereo, it's not experienced in space, it's just a photograph on the internet or maybe in a magazine, to where they actually see it and see how the light reflects off of it. And I think the design zeitgeist of the Cybertruck should find itself, I'm talking as an architect, it should find itself into other things. The only problem is that if you have a conventional house or a conventional apartment, it will make it look very boring. It's like, unless you fight crime, you can't just park this in front of a regular house. It just doesn't look right. So when I got to the Tesla dealership in December, the assistant, as we're going to pick up the Model Y, he said, do you want to just roll it over into a Cybertruck?
Oh.
And I said, no, just get away from me, leave me alone. Because I can't park this in front of my regular American-looking house in Charlotte, North Carolina. It wouldn't work. But I think it's a thing of uncommon beauty. The DeLorean, which was a car by a small company in the U.S. back in the 70s, 80s, it was popularized in a movie called Back to the Future. The Cybertruck is like this angry DeLorean, and I think the idea of also not having to create paint colors simplifies not only manufacturing from that standpoint. You don't have to worry. Other people can go wrap it in plastic, whatever they want. But it's resilient. So in architectural terms, there's an appreciation for materials that are what they are. So if I see wood, I expect it to be wood. If I see stone, I expect it to be stone. If I see this truck, it reveals what it's made of. And that's not common in cars for the last few decades.
No.
They make it out of plastic and they paint it like it's made of something else. So we'll see.
It's so different. In the US, the Ford F-150 has been the top-selling vehicle for more than 40 years. At what point do you see the Cybertruck potentially becoming the top-selling vehicle, at least in the US?
So when the iPod first came out, my director at the company I was working at, I saw one day he had this little device on his desk, and I said, oh, you got a new iPod for Christmas? And he went, oh, it's a Zune. I think this is what's going to happen with the truck.
Uh-huh.
They go, oh, I heard you got a new truck. What did you get? Oh, conventional vehicle. Oh, you should have got. I know. So I think for some people it will appeal to their sense of economy.
Yeah.
But for many, it will appeal to their sense of vanity. And eventually it will become, I'm looking forward to when it becomes not just, where it becomes mundane, to where it passes you and you don't get excited, but you can then start to really appreciate some subtle details. The windshield wiper, instead of having wipers like this, it has one wiper on the side.
Gigantic.
It looks so good. Architecturally, there's another thing that happens on cars where the windscreen goes up to the top and then it meets the top structure of the vehicle. And there's some structure shown there. On the Cybertruck, the glass goes right to the top and it just seems to disappear. That kind of decision making, it looks very simple, it looks very minimal and angular, but I think it's very intentional. It's very balanced. It in some ways I think it could be a much older truck in a way, although it looks very futuristic. There's a very minimal sort of design to it, very, very simple aesthetic.
It's very
Yeah,
Apple-like.
Yeah, the only thing I didn't like was the rims on the wheels, the wheel covers. I thought they could have been stainless as well, carrying through. And the wheels do look very militaristic, like very angry kind of Marvel comic wheel. But as a smaller, as a roadster with different doors, maybe gold, I don't know. The aesthetic is beautiful. It's what was the there's a James Bond film where he goes off the cliff into the water. It was a Lotus.
Yeah.
Very angular design. It's taking this aesthetic. So.
And we've seen clips online where people see the Cybertruck in like the neighborhood streets and kids go crazy. Like, people just want to take pictures with it, ask about it. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that as Cybertruck starts rolling out around. I hope to do a road trip with the Cybertruck in the coming months. What are you most excited about for Tesla this year?
I think if the ecosystem starts to come together, it will become greater than the sum of its parts. So if you want to make a new iPhone and compete with Apple, good luck. Because you also have to create a computer that it syncs with, a watch that it syncs with. If I drop this and it breaks, I immediately go to the Apple store and it downloads all of my information back to my new version. It's the ecosystem that makes the technology powerful. And the ecosystem they've created around thought with Twitter and robotics and movement and transportation outside of our atmosphere. This is an extraordinary ecosystem. I would expect, Singapore is equatorial.
Yes.
And I don't know why I would expect if we're going to have international travel that's efficient and elegant, I would expect Tesla or SpaceX is going to have a launch pad off of Singapore. And for children in a generation or two, it'll be mundane. It'll just be like, that's how you've always lived.
Yes.
But for us, it'll be very exciting to see it go from no rocket to rockets that come back and land, that you can watch from Marina Bay.
Yes. And evidence of mundane is when last week, when SpaceX launched the Crew Dragon flight, people were not talking much about it.
No.
It's just
happens.
normal.
You might as well take off from Changi Airport and fly back to the US.
Exactly.
No one goes out to see the airplane go away.
Yes.
Yeah, but there was a time when the first airplanes came in that people would take the moment to celebrate and go and pack a lunch and go and watch them. I think we'll do the same. Singapore will do the same. When the first rockets take off and come back and land, they'll go out and watch. They'll bring lunch. They'll bring the children, and eventually we'll just go back to our lives. The rockets will come and go.
And that's, while you may feel sad, that's also progress to turn spectacle into the mundane. And I always think about, whereas we talk about the biographies, I admire Steve Jobs and Elon Musk. Steve Jobs is great at making the small look big. Like pulls out an iPod and 1,000 songs in your pocket. Elon Musk is great at making the big look small. We've launched like 96 rockets and landed them last year. We've now got 5 million EVs on the road. And to people that's like, yeah, sure, it's 5 million EVs, what's a big deal? Whereas 5 years ago, people would be thinking that's crazy, it's unimaginable. Almost every investment analyst said that Tesla could not make more than 1 million cars per year. And here we are asking, when are they going to make 2 million, 3 million per year?
Yeah, it's been an extraordinary journey, and I think he suffered physically and emotionally to see it through. But it was he was driven to do it. Now that it's done, I don't know how it will cease to exist. It's a life of its own. And so part of me is torn with this apparent drive to go to Mars. I wish he would turn his attention to Earth with the same kind of passion he's trying. Like if he wants to take rockets to asteroids and mine rare earth minerals and make Earth amazing, fantastic, as opposed to maybe, his impact on humanity. I wish it would stay where humanity is right now. Yeah, in some way.
I believe both can happen and will happen at the same time, as Starship allows us to dramatically reduce the cost per ton going into orbit and space. There's a lot of valuable material on Mars and nearby asteroids that would make life easier together at Tesla board. And I'm curious to hear from you. While the world has seen Tesla as a car company for many years, some Tesla investors feel that the company may be at an inflection point. It's like Apple before iPhone, known as a PC company.
That's right. Apple before the first iMac was a computer company, and you had to choose, do I want this operating system or this operating system, because I needed to do a certain thing and I have to choose.
Yes.
But then the internet went, I really don't care about the operating system. So this idea of technology being for, technology inflects when it's used by people that don't know how to do the thing. So the Apple computer was for people that were not technically capable. They wanted to get online because they just want to read, they just want to consume information. It was another way of consuming news or paying bills or something. But it was for people that, the Macintosh, but I think really the iMac was for people that they don't know how to use a computer. The iPhone is for people that really don't want to make phone calls. How many times do you see young people now making phone calls with the phone? It's texting, or it's really, I think, more of the iPhone is not for people that want to make phone calls. It's for people that want to memorialize their existence. So they're constantly taking photos. The AirPods are for people that don't want, I use my AirPods not to hear, I think it would be interesting. I would expect young people to wear the Pro Visor as a status symbol more than they wear it to consume media.
It's interesting.
So in Singapore, you'll see young people wearing a Pro Visor around their neck, and that's just a status symbol. Historically, cultures have used things that you put around their neck as a way of expressing status. I mean, this goes back a long way. I think that's how people will wear the Vision Pro. They'll use it to consume some media, but I think it will be used more to, at least maybe initially before it becomes mundane, it'll be used to communicate status. And the screen on the front, I was talking to an architecture friend last week, there's going to be apps very quickly for the screen on the front that will advertise your social media page, your YouTube page, your QR code, and that's what's going to be on the front of it. And you just wear it around your neck, like flashing little $2,300, $3,500 status symbol. Yeah, a lot. But it's a whole new computing environment. So it's if Apple made glasses so that I don't have to see advertisements in flashing colors, I would wear them. So yeah, it's the technology inflects when you use it to do something, when you use it not to do something.
Interesting.
So you're buying the Tesla so you don't drive.
Fair.
Yeah.
We talked a lot about Apple, and investors have been rewarded very well over the past 2 decades as the company transformed itself. There are a lot of parallels now. Initially, Teslas were seen as a status symbol too, and it's evolving. As Phil mentioned, you get it to not drive. What is your investment thesis on Tesla?
It's an extension of my investment thesis, which is buy what you buy. So if you find a product that gives you a very elegant and polite experience as a customer, don't just buy the product, buy the thing that makes the product. Okay, so if you're buying a $400 iPod when they first came out, it's not worth anything now. But if you had bought another $400 in stock in Apple, it will be worth over 100,000 US. So if I'm going to buy Apple products, I also want to put away the same amount of money or more in the product that makes the product. I feel the same way about Tesla. And it's not because they're making a product. It's ultimately because they're making an ecosystem that will become the sum that's greater than the parts. Because as a product, you can try to compete with products. Microsoft made phones, or maybe they made the Zune, but they found it impossible to compete with the ecosystem. So a company's going to come out and want to make a robot, and a company's going to come out and want to make a car, or maybe a social media tool. But how are they going to compete with all of this? And these Tesla, the Tesla computer is incredibly powerful, and it's just sitting still doing nothing. If Tesla starts to leverage this computer for compute for things like language models and augmented or artificial intelligence, that's another very powerful inflection point. Because if I have to pay for compute as a consumer in order to ask a question or to investigate an idea with some kind of AI, or if I can leverage my car sitting still in my driveway and leverage the compute of that with my own locally hosted AI, particularly for privacy concerns, how is another company going to compete with this ecosystem? I think Google can compete, but then they don't make cars.
Yes.
And Apple can make cars and try to compete, but they don't make the other thing. So I think it's very interesting from an ecosystem standpoint.
I'm hearing loud and clear that it's the ecosystem that's a very important part of your investment thesis. It creates a strong moat for the company. And Elon Musk always says that one of their greatest strengths is their pace of innovation. It's not just what they have today, it's how quickly they iterate and improve. And that's true after visiting so many Tesla factories. Phil, thank you so much for coming down all the way from Charlotte, North Carolina, here in Singapore to share a story about your
I'll see you in
Tesla journey.
Charlotte. It'll be great.
I want to visit one day. I got a chance to go to Atlanta, I'm going to New Orleans, and
Holden Beach.
Closer, Golden Beach,
Yeah.
where pirates were.
Oh yeah, Pirates. Holden Beach, North Carolina. Yeah. Thank you, Daren.
Thank you so much, Phil. If you found this video useful, please click the like button. I look forward to sharing more stories with Tesla owners and investors from around the world. And click subscribe to stay updated to more videos on Tesla. Bye-bye, everyone.